Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing a 15-minute game on ICC. This is part of the cycle of games that I've decided to start doing, or cycle of time controls, rather. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play Bullet, Blitz, and Standard for a while on my channel and see how it goes. I already mentioned this in another video, but just in case you're watching this one first, that's what I plan to do. I'll play the main line of this Accelerated Dragon. We'll see how this goes. Had to wait a little bit of a while here to get a game. That's one thing about the 15-minute pool. It's a lot less populated than like the 3 and 5-minute pools on ICC. So the time in between games is a lot longer. You have to wait. Okay, so here, this is an instructive position. In the past, I vividly remembered a game I played against Andrew Karklins, who's a FIDE master from Illinois. And I think at the time I was a little bit lower rated than him. This was well over 10 years ago. I think at the Chicago Open, maybe 2002 or so, 2002 or 2003. And I castled in this position. But that allows the move knight takes e4. And then after white recaptures, black can play d5, the so-called center fork trick. So what white wants to do here is play bishop b3. This is the standard move. He plays d6. So now I have an option between f3 and h3. I can choose between those two moves. If I play f3, there's a good chance we'll transpose into a Yugoslav attack. I could play queen d2 and then castle long. h3 will keep it in Accelerated Dragon territory. Let's go f3. Yeah, I'll go queen d2. And it looks like he'll probably play rook c8, I'm guessing. He might know a thing or two about this line. No, he takes on d4 instead. Okay, so I'll take with the bishop. This might change my strategy. Like I might, I'm thinking about castling kingside now. There are some nuances to these positions. So if I castle kingside, he'll likely play a5. But that's okay. I think I'm okay with that. I didn't want to castle queenside anymore. I think my attack will be harder to execute on the king side when he's already shoving his A and B pawns at me. So that's why I castled short rather than long. All right, so here do I play A4 or A3? My gut says A3 is the right move. So I'll go with that one. It's a bit more restrained. If he wants to play B4 and inconvenience my knight, then he has to accept and isolate a pawn in doing so. I'm just going to look at this guy's stats while I have some time here. Wow, this guy's played almost 6,000 15-minute games. That's a lot of 15-minute games. And his stats are 3,000 wins, and about 2,300 losses. So, yeah, plenty of practice. Doesn't do too well at the shorter time controls. It's interesting playing these 15-minute games. It's like you discover like a whole like subculture on ICC that previously I was only vaguely aware of. Like 15-minute has never been that popular of a time control on here. Okay, so in this position, knight d5 would be a natural move. However, I wonder if knight e2 is better. Because knight e2, I reinforce my bishop on d4, and I question him as to how he's going to defend that pawn on b4. He might play rook b8. Knight d5 makes a lot of sense, though. You know, I may just want to play that move. Knight d5, and if he takes it with his knight, I'm sort of inclined to take with the bishop, hitting his rook on a8. And then after, let's say, a trade on d4, he can take on a1, and I would recapture with my rook. And I would be hitting that pawn on b4. So that pawn on b4 is like a constant thorn in his side. But I just get the impression that he's capable of defending it. So I'm going to play knight e2. This move is maybe a little lamer than knight d5, but it keeps more pieces on the board. He still has to think about the b pawn. So I'm okay with it. If he goes rook b8 to defend the b pawn, I may go rook a7 and try to start attacking down the file. Bishop b5 is probably actually a decent move here. I didn't see bishop b5 when I went knight e2. Bishop b5 would ensure that I can't take on b4 because he would win my knight on e2. Yeah, maybe knight d5 was more accurate. If bishop b5, what can I do? I should just play like rook fe1 or something. Not really what I intended in this position, but it might be kind of forced. Otherwise, he's pinning my knight to my rook on f1. We'll see if he finds that move. He does. Yeah, that's a good move. You can also play like rook fd1. Like, why play rook fe1? It's kind of silly. Yeah, I mean, rook fd1 seems to make more sense. Okay, let's do that. I had to double check some tactics. Like, for instance, let's say he takes on a1 and I take back, and then he takes on e4. And then I take with my f-pawn, and then he takes on e2. Well, there's some question about whether my queen is overloaded, because if queen takes e2 in that position, he could play bishop takes d4 check. However, after bishop takes e2 there, I can insert the move bishop takes g7 in between move. He's going to lose a piece. So I just had to double check a few things like that. Let's just take. I bet he'll play knight d7. It's probably where he's headed with this. Trading the dark square bishops would make sense for him because he might gain access to the b6 square if he wants with his queen. And as of now, my bishops are fairly dominating on these diagonals, so it would make a lot of sense for him to trade one. It looks like he is going for that. This guy's playing a good game so far. I'll probably take and then... Not sure. I'd like to go attack his b-pawn, but he gets queen b6 in then. Maybe a better move here is like queen f2 or something. Maybe that's like a little bit better. Let's try queen f2. Just so that if we trade, we can trade on our own terms. He can get the queens off now if he wants. He can take on d4, and when I take back with my queen, he can play queen b6. So at that point, I'll just swap and I'll bring my king up to f2. More than likely. I don't think I'm much better now. I think if I have an advantage, it's very tiny. So this will be interesting to see if I can outplay him from here. Take with my queen. Need my rook on d1 to defend the a1 rook. We'll see if he hurries to get the queens off the board. Knight c5 might not be a bad move either, even though that hangs the b-pawn. Let's say knight c5 and I take on b4. Well, he could then play rook b8, followed by, after I move my queen, knight takes b3. And he'll probably end up winning the pawn back, and I'll have a horrible pawn structure on the queen side. Double isolated b-pawns. So if he plays knight c5, I will probably play something like bishop d5. No, he goes for queen b6. Okay. I think I see a way I can win a pawn. So what I'm thinking is take on b6. He takes with the knight. I take on a8 then. He takes with the rook, and then I play rook d4. I think that wins a pawn for me clean. There's a few small complications. Because he can check me on a1 at that point. I bring my king up. He can go rook b1 to hit b2 pawn. I would take on b4 with tempo on his knight. Then let's say knight d7. I guess I do hold on to the pawn in that case. Okay, so let's do that. I have to make a pretty fast decision. I could try to do something else with the A file, but I don't see... I think the maximum I'm getting is winning this pawn. He might even take with the knight if he sees what I'm up to with rook d4. Nope, he did not. He might be able to play knight a4, but I think at the very least I could take on b4, he takes on b2. His knight is nearly trapped there. I also have bishop takes f7 in that position if I want, and I can win a pawn. So we're now in a technical endgame, bishop versus knight, where it looks like I'm going to go up a pawn soon. So maybe we'll see something instructive, hopefully. About even on time. Both been playing fairly quickly, I'd say. I'd love to say that I'll be able to do this every day, but that remains to be seen. As long as I think it's educational and I keep getting decent games in the 15-minute pool, I'll gladly keep playing these. And also provided I have the time to record them. Because I think it would be good to do bullet, blitz, and standard. One video each day of each time control. So he's now thinking, how can he make the best of this situation? And I think his options are basically rook a1 check, knight a4, or maybe a move like knight d7. I don't think any other move really makes sense for him. Regardless, I'm going to try to consolidate my position. My king will most likely be coming up to f2 soon after I win the pawn. I don't want it lingering on the back rank. I want it to be involved. I want to have an active king if I'm going to win this position. I will get a b pawn that will be passed. It's a long way from being relevant, but that could be a decisive factor down the road. If I were to criticize his play slightly, I think he was in a little bit too much of a hurry to simplify. You could tell he wasn't really thinking about the possibility of rook d4. So this line is interesting, because now I can do a couple different things. Like one thought I even had was taking on a4, and after he takes with the rook, playing, let's say, king f2 then, and trying to somehow win the b pawn soon. Yeah, like I'd be threatening c3 there, for instance. I'm not too sure about that, though. Also, I can just take on b4, and if he takes on b2, maybe just play like king f2. That'd be a real easy way to play it. His knight, like I said, is nearly trapped. It's not quite trapped, though. It can get out. All right, I trust this move a little bit more, so I'm going to do that one. And if he takes on b2, I mean, it's a gutsy place for his knight. So yeah, he just went back instead. He must have felt it was too risky. Yeah, I think I can just do this. I don't want to trade my bishop for his knight right now. He can come down with check, but I'll play probably bishop f1 in that case. Seems weird to pin my own bishop, but I think it's a good idea. He can really only attack these pawns, and especially that c pawn. That's the only thing that's truly vulnerable in my position right now. So he didn't do that. I should probably just play king f2. Yeah, I don't see why not. His knight is strong. I need to kick it off of c5 sooner or later. So I'll be trying to move my rook and then play b4. Is how I intend to make progress. I'm a little surprised he didn't play rook a1 on the previous move. He's sort of indicating that he wants to like bring his king up to e5 or something. Okay, let's go rook b6. By doing that, maybe I can play b4. And if he goes king e5, there's a question of whether I can take on f7 or not. So main idea of rook b6 is just to play b4, though. Now he plays rook a1, okay. So if I go b4 here, knight d7, let's say rook b7, knight e5, bishop e2. Yeah, I'm making progress. His knight is actually running out of squares in that case. I like the look of that one. If he goes knight a4, I can pin him with rook a6. So that's an important point. So I'm expecting knight d7, and then I'll play rook b7. He'll go knight e5. Bishop b3 is possible there, but I kind of like bishop e2, just to get out of the way of my pawns entirely. And also with bishop e2, I'm threatening f4. It's a real perk of that move. Bishop b3, though, guards the a2 square. So I might want to give that some thought as well. I think he has to play knight d7 here. Well, I guess he could go knight e6. I don't know why I wasn't considering knight e6. Yeah, I wasn't thinking about that move at all. If knight e6, I could take and go into the pure rook endgame. Or I could try to keep stuff on the board, although his knight might get dangerous jumping into d4 or f4. Knight e6 might be a better practical chance for him. So with knight d7, he loses some time, and his knight is going to be a liability soon. Oh, you know, actually, in the line knight d7, rook b7, knight e5, bishop e2, I'm not threatening to win his knight yet. Because I'll do this anyways. Rook a6. Nah, rook a6 is nothing. Because in that position, he has the c6 square available. So I wonder if this will alter my decision whether to play bishop e2 or bishop b3. It's a very close call. Like, both moves kind of feel right to some degree. I think bishop e2. I think I just slightly prefer this move. Maybe because my bishop can help support the b pawn. I don't know. It feels like the right move. Like, one thing I can do is, let's say he plays rook a2 here. I can play rook c7, defend this pawn, and then push my b pawn. And I have him, like, sort of cut off on the c file, and my bishop is supporting the pawn. Yeah, so, like, here, this is actually a pretty sneaky move. Because now, not only am I threatening to push the b pawn, but I'm also just simply threatening f4. Yeah, and he looks like he didn't see the f4 threat, which I believe just wins me a piece now. Yeah, this knight is running out of squares. It has no squares. Yep. He can take on b4, but I'll take e5. That's a winning endgame. Probably what he had to do was play g5 on the previous move to make sure I don't play f4. And even though I can play b5 then, maybe then he gets behind my pawn and, you know, could be tough for him to stop it. So he offered to draw and then resigned immediately after. Okay, let's go back and have a look. What's nice is with these 15-minute games, I guess I don't feel as compelled to do as long of a postmortem as I do with some of my blitz games because I get so long to talk about my thought process during the game. But still, I'll do postmortems, of course. So as I mentioned, castles is like a common mistake in this position. Knight takes e4 is known to be good for black. And then after knight takes knight, d5. Black is at least equal, probably just better, actually. The other line, which I think I played against Karklands in that game from Chicago that I was referencing. Check. I played bishop takes f7 in that game. Here, I think the right move is it king takes? This might be a line where king takes is good. I remember some game like by Alexei Shirov where he did this. Is it Shirov? Could be. I don't remember too much about this line. But for that reason, white should play bishop b3. Those of you who know a lot of classic games may also remember a game by Bobby Fischer against Samuel Reshevsky, where in this position, Reshevsky played knight a5. And that was a big mistake because of e5, after which this knight only has one safe square to go to, because g4 is covered by white's queen, d5 and e4 are no-goes, so it can't go there. If h5, knight h5, then pawn g4 traps the knight. This is a standard way to trap a knight on the side of the board, using one of your knight pawns. So black was forced to play knight e8. Now Fischer came up with a really brilliant move here. I don't know if this was preparation by Fischer or if he figured this out over the board, but if you want a little challenge for yourself and you haven't seen this before, white to move and win, what should white do? You can pause your video if you like. So the answer is bishop takes f7.
Check.
Awesome combination, or tactical stroke. And no matter which way black takes back, white will play knight e6 on the next move, exploiting the pin on the d file, the pin on the d7 pawn. So if rook takes, then knight e6, black queen is trapped. If he takes it, queen takes d8, game over. If king takes, still knight e6. And after king takes, which is pretty much forced, because otherwise, if pawn takes, we would lose the queen again. So king takes, there's force mate, queen g5 check, king here, g4 check, king takes, rook g1. This is going to be over shortly. Let's say king h5, and I think like queen g2 is sufficient in this position with multiple mating threats. I can't remember exactly how that game ended, but it was a swift victory for Fischer. So, knight a5, not considered to be a good move. In fact, considered to be a very bad move. I believe after e5, black can take on b3, but then white inserts this move, and knight takes a1, f takes g7. Very good position for white, with the two minor pieces against the rook soon. So, he played a better move. He played d6. The other main line is a5. This can be aggressive. Here, white has some options, like castling or f3. But he played d6, and I played f3 myself. And I mentioned that h3 is also a possibility. Both moves are needed in order to stop knight g4. When you have a bishop on e3 in the Sicilian, you have to be very wary of a knight coming into g4. That's why English attack lines are lines where you play bishop e3 followed immediately by f3, because you create like a little stronghold for your bishop here. The pawn on f3 guards g4, and your bishop can stay here unopposed. So I was expecting him to play bishop d7. He did actually play bishop d7. I played queen d2. So I was expecting him to play rook c8, which is the main line, and then castle, and then knight e5, whereupon we're in some mainline dragon theory. But he took on d4, which also doesn't really take us out of dragon theory too far. I'm pretty certain I've seen this position before. I just, I don't remember much about it. In fact, I think Greg Shahadi was telling me something about this position a while back. So I think I saw him talk about it, not on one of his videos, actually in person when I saw him somewhere. But, yeah, b5. Because, as I said, I'm less enthusiastic to castle queenside in this case, because I feel like his pawns are pretty far along, whereas I don't have any kingside attack to speak of. So, all things considered, I think castling short makes a lot of sense here for white. I think it's the more sensible option, too. And here I like a3. I like how this turned out. b4. I took. Now, here's the big decision, knight e2 or knight d5. If I saw that knight e2 could be answered by the move that he played in the game, bishop b5, I probably would have chosen knight d5 instead. I think I would have changed my mind. So, knight d5, and then if takes, I was, playing around with the idea of taking with the bishop, hitting his rook on a8. Let's say he takes here. I take with the queen. I'm not sure what he should do with the rook. I feel like he shouldn't trade it, but rook b8 looks very passive. I don't know if that's what he wants, really. Because I can invade with my rook then, This is an annoyance along the 7th rank. White has a good position. So maybe he should trade. Maybe he should just trade and then, I don't know, play queen b8, something along those lines, defending the pawn. But always this rook gets into a7, and looks to me like he has a ways to go to equalize. I don't think it's going to happen so soon. Maybe e5 or something. Let's say queen e3. I don't know if he can get away with bishop e6 because, well, actually he might be able to. My queen can't come into h6 because the rook is hanging. So, I don't know. He probably can equalize after knight d5. It would require some work, I think. It's not a gimme. So let's see which one the engine prefers. None of the above. Likes rook takes a8. Of course, a move that I didn't even consider. Rook takes a8, queen takes a8. I mean, I knew that a rook exchange was possible. I just didn't think it would be beneficial in this move order. And now the engine's like, you know, who cares, John? Just go after the b-pawn. What's he going to do to defend it? And that is a good point that the engine is making. I'm attacking his b-pawn twice, and at maximum he can defend it once with his next move. So, well, it's really that simple, huh? What if we choose between the two set of moves that I was looking at? So knight d5. Healthy advantage. Knight takes. It actually says take with the pawn. Yeah, I don't really like doing that with my bishop on b3. I think I would have taken this way. Still a nice advantage for white. And let's compare that to the game continuation. So knight e2, bishop b5. Okay. Yeah, I still have an edge here. So maybe it wasn't so bad. I was talking about how it's good for him to exchange the dark square bishops. That eases some pressure on his position. And just organizationally speaking, he needs to move this knight and oppose this piece here. He just can't play the position hardly otherwise. There's not much to do. So his knight stands on a poor square right now. My bishop is much stronger than his bishop, which is not even playing at the moment. So knight d7 makes perfect sense. I played queen f2. Okay, so the engine's approving of my moves thus far. Yeah, and like I said, I think he was in a bit too much of a hurry to simplify. I mentioned the possibility of knight c5. That might be a more dynamic try. With the point that if I take on b4, he has rook b8. And he's going to counterattack me down the b file. Like, just to illustrate, if queen c3, he can take, and play queen d6 check. And then take this pawn next move. And then it will be equal material. I'll have a pass pawn, but check this position out. This is not a position where a pass pawn is desirable. He has too many major pieces opposing it, and this is like, you know, a pass pawn is also an isolated pawn, right? Or it can be an isolated pawn. This is a case where it's more of an isolated pawn than a pass pawn. It's not going to get much further than its current square, if at all. You know, if I do this, the engine's suggesting I just forget about the b-pawn altogether and go after that, which makes sense. But, you know, if I were to, like, hunker down and try to defend this guy, I'm going to be doomed to passivity the whole game, really, this entire ending. So, it's a fine line between a pass pawn and an isolated pawn, especially in an endgame. So, that's why I think knight c5 should have been under consideration for him if it wasn't. But he played queen b6, and I think he just overlooked this simplifying operation I can do with rook d4 at the end. And I was expecting him to play check. Go for this line. But at any rate, it seems like I'm going to pick up that pawn. So he plays knight a4. Now I was thinking briefly about this option. And then somehow, like, exploiting this pin on the 4th rank. But I wasn't entirely sure. Like, let's say he plays a move that the computer suggests. Let's say king g7. King g7 looks normal. And I play c3. And he plays king f6. If I take on b4, is this actually winning for me? I'm not sure. Because I'm up a pawn, but it's negated by the fact that there's two pawns. And again, he has the one pawn mass. I don't know that this is winning. It seems like it should be, because usually when you can create an outside passer and a pawn ending that distracts your opponent's king, that bodes well for you because you can go and attack his other pawns while he's distracted. But and also there's the fact that black doesn't have to go into that. He could, like, after I take on b4, just move his rook and play down a pawn in the rook ending. It'll still be tough to win. But all in all, I think it's better to take on b4. I think I have more options that way. He probably should have taken on b2, in which case I'd have to decide whether I want to cash in and play bishop takes f7 and then win this pawn. But he's pretty active and might stand a good chance of stopping me from winning this ending, because my c-pawn is not strong. More than likely, I would have tried to operate with his knight on b2 and try to, like, corral it somehow. Like, the engine suggesting king f2, that was a move I considered in this position. Because even if he tries to wiggle free, he might not get anywhere. Let's say something like that. Yeah, like the knight coming to a2. Actually, yeah, maybe king d2 is more accurate for that reason. So if knight a2, he can't come here. So yeah, it's quite possible that he can hold with perfect play here. I wouldn't bet on black, though. I think in a practical game, this is very, very difficult. So knight c5, I was able to free up my bishop. King f2, like standard improving moves for both of us. He brought his king up, so did I. That has to be one of the first things you consider in an endgame, is how to activate your king. For the simple reason that in endgames, there's usually not that much direct danger to the respective kings. And if you were to assign a point value for the king, I often see it given as roughly 4 points, so somewhere between a minor piece and a rook. So if you don't activate your king, you're losing out on a lot of value there. Here I mentioned that maybe he should have played knight e6, and that does seem to be the better move. I was just blanking on this move for a while. I didn't even think it was possible. I wonder if he looked at it too. Probably he did, but then he can make his way into these squares. The knight has more possibilities from this square. And I'm not sure about these rook endings. Like these pure rook endgames, yeah, I'm up a pawn, but once again, it's not easy to win this. Rook endings up a pawn are never easy, unless there's some like theoretical position where the win is has already been documented many times over. So, yeah, knight d7 looks rough for him. And now his knight is getting slowly surrounded. I don't think he realized that his knight was running out of flight squares. And I can nearly trap it. I had this dilemma whether to play bishop b3 or bishop e2. So the engine slightly prefers bishop b3. Says my position is very good in the case of bishop e2 as well. Yeah, this makes a lot of sense as well. I don't know. I'm still happy with my choice. I like this. And rook c7 is sneaky now. And he has to do something to save his knight. I was suggesting the move g5, so that f4 is impossible now. g5 improves his pawn structure too, because he stakes out some space on the king side and restricts my pawns. The more pawns he can keep on light squares for me, the better. All that said, though, this pawn is dangerous, like b5, and he's going to have to address my b pawn very soon. Rook b2, yeah, king e3. I can slowly improve my position. Maybe bring my king over and try to uproot his rook somehow, like c3 or c1. Maybe slowly play g3 and f4, kick his knight out of this square. At this point, I think it's technically won for me, but he could put up some strong resistance. Yeah, as played, he didn't realize that the knight was running out of flight squares, so f4. Yep, and he resigned. All right, hope you guys enjoyed that 15-minute game. I enjoyed playing that one. Gives me a chance to try out openings that I don't play so often too. Like, I'm not a huge e4 player, but this is how you learn openings. You try stuff that you're not as comfortable with. For me, e4 has been a back burner opening for a long time for white, but I've actually had pretty good results with it playing on videos. So, all right, well, please leave me any feedback in the comments, guys. Talk to you later.